Welcome to Pique Your Interest, your go-to podcast for all things mortgage and real estate. Hosted by Tanner Greenwald and Tim Malaskis. We bring you expert insights to help you buy, sell, and invest with confidence. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to the Pique Your Interest podcast, the podcast where we seek to demystify all things real estate related. I am one of your hosts. I'm Tim Malaskis. I'm a loan officer here at the Millersville branch.
And I am Tanner Greenwald with the Greenwald team at our Millersville branch.
And today we are coming here to talk to you about some different parts of your mortgage payment. Not everybody knows that this is part of, the overall housing payment that we take into account. Now, most of the things that we're going to talk about today aren't included in your actual mortgage payment. So when you make your mortgage payment each month, it's usually principal, interest, property taxes, mortgage insurance, homeowners insurance. But there are some ancillary fees that come with certain types of properties, and there are payments that need to be made either monthly, quarterly, yearly, whatever the case might be for these things. And so we want to sort of highlight the ones that are probably the most common, so that you know what you're getting into in advance. And sort of the way that we broke this down as we started thinking about what are these things. What do they actually do? Like, what is it useful for? Why are you paying this fee? And how does it impact you when you're buying? And so we're going to try to touch on all three of those things when we talk about each of these. So I will let Tanner take it away with the first one.
Yeah, so HOA. Oh, gosh, gotta love the HOA. And I'm going to be honest, I feel like none of these fees that we're going to talk about people are going to be excited about, but it's stuff that you should know. So HOA, I'm probably going to, talk about me personally, because I do live in a townhouse complex that has an HOA, so Perfect. I might use that as examples. An HOA is basically an association that is there to collect a fee, and the fee, it's used to enforce the HOA rules, maintain the areas that you live in that have like common areas, stuff like that. So what is associated with an HOA fee? Like, what are you paying for? So me specifically, we have people come out and they do landscaping in the back common area. So they're mowing the grass, they're not cutting down trees, but trimming trees, you know what I mean? Things like that. We do have a pool as a part of our HOA as well. So any type of pool maintenance, they deal with that as well. Snow removal, if you are looking to get your street paved, I think I've had my street paved 3 separate times since I moved in. But that's typically what they are covering. That's what the fee you're paying is for them to help, fix stuff like that. And the fees, they vary depending on, I guess, the HOA that you're buying into. So mine typically goes up every year or so, and it's not by much. I think it goes up $5 every year, mine specifically. It can range anywhere from $50 to $350 if you're purchasing in a luxury area. They're probably going to be a little bit more expensive, but that makes sense, And another thing to note on with HOA is sometimes they run special assessments. So I actually just got an email from my HOA specifically that said that there's an assessment that's going to be done. And it's almost like a spreadsheet that they gave me, and it broke down, different things that they're going to be assessing and what the budget was for this previous year and what they're looking for the budget to be for for the next year coming up. And so they're literally assessing the HOA and the costs. And that's just something that they'll let you know about if some type of special assessment's going on. Are you part of an HOA?
I am not.
Oh, God, lucky. So that's something to look out for, kind of thing. How does this affect the buyer? So we include it as a part of your monthly payment to basically show you what your full monthly payment is going to look like. But this is a fee that you pay outside of, acquiring your loan type of thing. It does affect your debt to income ratio. We do have to include it as a part of running numbers when we are running numbers for you. But we, show it to you as a courtesy in your fee sheet to break it down to show you that that's what you're paying monthly, kind of thing. Another thing to note on HOAs is you, as the homeowner, you're able to go attend these HOA meetings. So there's usually board meetings that are held every so often. I've never been to one, probably because if I go to one, it's not going to be pretty. But, if you are a homeowner and you want to be a part of the board, they have positions available for people to be on the board. You can go to the meetings. You can tell them what you think should be changed in the association, things like that. So you can be involved in the HOA if you would like to. Another thing, so they will come and they'll check on your house basically. Yep. So I've seen people firsthand come out and they just kind of examine the area. They look at the siding, they make sure you're mowing your grass, things like that. And if you're not, then they'll write you up and they'll give you something in the mail and it has to be fixed, and they'll probably come back out and re-look at it. But this is all what an HOA does. So it just kind of encompasses what an HOA is, what fees you're paying into, or paying for kind of thing. So yeah, HOAs aren't pretty, but they're helpful in helping you, as the homeowner. It's less that you have to take care of, basically.
Yeah. And some are more strict than others too, right?
Yeah.
Like some will perform more rigorous visits,
Yes.
and some are a little more relaxed about it. So it's it's different depending on where you're going to live.
Yeah.
And it would be really hard as a buyer to know what is what, so you need to rely on your real estate agent or neighbors that are already living there.
Yeah.
Whatever kind of information you could find out ahead of time would be helpful, because if you're the kind of person that doesn't like to have a lot of rules and restrictions and you want to paint your door hot pink with brown polka dots, the HOA may not let you do that.
Yeah.
You need to make sure that what you're buying into you're comfortable with. But also, when you are buying into an HOA community, there are HOA documents that you get prior to buying, and you have the ability to review those, read through all the rules. There's an out in the real estate contract. You can get out of the contract for HOA documents. If there's something in the documentation that you don't like, you don't have to buy that house. You might be pretty far into the transaction before you receive those. You still have an out to get out of. So it's not... you're not tied into having to follow those rules just because you signed a contract for a house like that. You also get a chance to review what those rules are and decide whether or not that's something you want to move forward with.
Yeah. HOAs aren't very pretty.
Trying to make it sound better than it is.
Yeah,
Dana.
I mean, we're just stating the facts. Like, nobody really wants to be paying an HOA fee, because I'm the type of person, I'll tackle it by myself kind of thing, but they're helpful. What about front foot fees?
Front foot fees are something that I don't think a lot of people know about.
It's a weird name.
It is a weird name as well. It's a front foot assessment. Essentially what it is the charge that utility companies charge to developers of newer neighborhoods, new construction, and, we'll get into how long this lasts. But when a property is newly constructed, you have to hook up a water and sewer line to it, right? Like, you've got to be able to have access to water and the sewer line to get rid of waste. And so utility companies charge developers to install these up to every house. There's the main line that connects everything, and then there's lines that come from your house to the main line. That those lines that connect the main line to your house are what the front foot assessment is for. So utility companies charge the developers for this. The developer in turn charges you as a buyer. So generally these last, in the research I did, it said 20 to 40 years. Most of the time you see 30 years. I feel like a lot of the front foot assessments that I've seen have lasted for 30 years. So if you're buying a new construction property, or you're buying a property that was constructed within the last 30 years, there's probably some sort of front foot assessment associated with it. You can buy it out at any time if you really wanted to, but let's say you buy the property new construction, you think you're going to live there 10 years, you might not want to buy it out, because why would you pay that extra 20 years of the front foot assessment if you're not going to be living there? Maybe it's a selling point. You could say, hey, this property does not have a front foot assessment because I paid it out. So certainly weigh the pros and the cons of that. But I think for the most part, I think most people wouldn't buy that out in advance, but just pay it yearly. It's usually a couple $100 a year, and you just pay it once a year to the utility company. Within the first 30 years that you have it. It impacts you much like the HOA does, in that it's part of your monthly expense. It's part of what we count as your, in air quotes, housing payment. It's not actually included in your mortgage payment. It's something that is that's something that you pay for separately outside of it, kind of like an HOA fee and some of the other things that we'll talk about. But usually that's not the breaking point. That's not something that will prevent you from being able to qualify for a house, but it's good to know what it is. And if you're buying a property that's over 30 years old or over 40 years old, you're not going to have that front foot assessment. You may never own a home that has a front foot assessment. You would never know what it is, but just in case you happen to be looking at a property that does, that's what it covers.
And sometimes you can have a front foot assessment fee and an HOA, because that's what I have a front foot and I have an HOA too. So
these aren't exclusive.
Right.
They can
you can't have one or the other. It's like they can stack them on you.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then probably the next most common one that we see, especially in the area that we're in, are condo fees.
Yeah.
What do you know about those?
Yeah, so condo fees. The condos, they're not bad, but they're a little bit trickier because it's a lot more involved with them. So condo fees are similar to HOA fees, and they do cover what HOA fees cover. But HOA fees are covering your common areas, whereas the condo fee is covering the common areas and the building itself. So it's your landscaping. Most condos have pools associated with them, gyms, things like that. So the fee you're paying is to maintain all of that stuff. Sometimes condo fees include condo insurance too for the building as well. So typically, if you're buying a condo and you're calling a homeowner's insurance agent and you're looking to get homeowner's insurance as a part of buying a home, it's less than what it is if you're buying a single family type of thing. Typically homeowner's insurance on a condo is like $50 a month, if that, because the condo association is backing that with being insured for the building kind of thing. How does it affect the buyer? Obviously, like we've been talking about, it is considered another debt towards the buyer, so it does affect your debt to income ratio because it is a higher debt that you're including. Condo fees, they are higher than HOA fees. So I've seen condo fees be $100. I've seen them at like $450 a month. So, but that fee is associated with them taking care of a good chunk of, what the condo is about. And another thing to note on with condos is getting them approved. So depending on the loan type you're going through, so if you're going through FHA, conventional, VA, USDA, whatever, the condo association themselves need to be approved. And then, we have a website that we can go and we can look up the actual condo association and it'll tell us if it's an approved condo, if it's expired, if it's non-approved, whatever. FHA specifically, we have to be dealing with approved condos. If they're not approved, then we need to get them approved, and that's something that could take a long time, take a hot minute to do that. If you're going conventionally, typically, if you're not going FHA and you're going conventionally, we look at delinquency rate. So the delinquency rate is basically the percentage of homeowners in the condo association who are paying or aren't paying kind of thing. If you're delinquent on your payments, then there's a certain percentage that we have to look out for. Typically, I think it's like 15%. Mm-hmm. So if we're looking at a condo association and the delinquency rate is 15% or higher, that's not necessarily good. We look at that as, okay, maybe the condo association is having financial issues or whatever the case is. So in that case, if it is higher than 15%, you're putting more money down. There might be other things associated with that as well. We just have to verify, as mortgage people, we need to make sure that the condo is approved and we're not just throwing money kind of at it or into it.
Yeah, getting condo approval has become extremely hasn't become extremely difficult. It's become harder.
It's not easy
than it used to be.
Yeah.
But a lot of it has to do with there's a new buzzword in mortgage banking and with regard to condos. It's deferred maintenance. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you remember back to the 2021 condo collapse in Miami, but there was a lot of work that should have been done to that condo over the years that wasn't done, that was considered deferred maintenance. Now that's something that all mortgage companies across America are looking at with condos, and that's part of the reason it's become so hard, because so many condos have allowed themselves to become outdated and maybe not as structurally sound as you would like. And there's plenty that are, and that's fine, but there's enough that aren't that it makes everybody nervous. And so now, the hoops that we have to jump through to get a condo approved have become, the work is greater, and the amount of time that we have to do it is less. The number of condos that fit the requirement are less. So we're doing more work for less properties. It's become a lot harder. It's not impossible, but it's definitely tricky. And I don't think it's something that a lot of people outside of the mortgage industry can truly appreciate how much work goes into getting a condo approved.
Or really just know that we have to get a condo approved. They're just like, oh, we're buying into a condo complex. Well, it's like, okay, there's stuff that's, associated with that. Yeah.
It's so complex now that we actually have, and we've had for a while, a condo department at our corporate office here at First Home.
Yep.
And it's an entire department dedicated to getting condominiums approved and letting us know what we need to do to get there and what documentation is acceptable, what isn't. we didn't just create this because it's fun. We created it because it has to be done, and we needed people that, these people have very specialized knowledge about condominiums. They've forgotten more about condos than you and I will ever know combined. It's just, it's a necessity in today's market. And that's not meant to steer you away from a condo, because condos are great. My first house was a condo, and it was fantastic, but it's become a little bit harder since then. So I hope that there's a level of appreciation out there for how hard it really is to get a condo approved.
Yeah, and honestly, when we look up condos on the website that we go and look it up on, I've been noticing there's more condo approvals out there now than there was even previous to COVID. Like, we would be looking up certain condos I can think of in PG County, and a lot of them were expired, and it's like it was harming clients being able to purchase these condos. And so it is important and it's necessary, and that's why, ground rent. A lot of people don't know about ground rent. I had to explain this to somebody the other day. So what is ground rent, and why?
All right, buckle up. This is going to be a good one.
Buckling.
I specifically requested to talk about this one because I think it's kind of cool. So ground rent is something that's really unique in America. It's most prevalent in Maryland, mostly like Baltimore City, Anne Arundel County. I think there's even parts of like Harford County and even Baltimore County that have it. But it's mostly the areas surrounding Baltimore City. There's a little bit in Pennsylvania, a little bit in West Virginia, I think Louisiana. Ireland is another place that has ground rent for those of you keeping score at home. Essentially, ground rent is where the homeowner owns the house and somebody else owns the land. So you're renting the ground rent. You're renting it from that landlord. And so what happens is, these leases were created as far back as like the 1700s in this state, at least, where, somebody owns the land. And if somebody else wants to build on it, they can do that, that's fine. But you need to pay a certain rent to that, to the landlord for as long as you own it. And so a lot of these leases were created for 99-year terms. It's a long time. And the leases themselves pass down to like heirs. It's something you can like will to, your people, like the people that you are, in your will, whether it's your children or your niece or your nephew or whatever it is, your spouse. You can will this to somebody, and it continues on, and there's a lot of times an automatic renewal after 99 years. If you're still the landowner, you pass away, your kids have it, it renews into their name. So whoever owns that property is continuously paying, and it's not a lot of money. I mean, it's usually somewhere between like $10 and $100 a year. So it's not breaking the bank, but it can become a little cumbersome because sometimes it's hard to find who the ground rent owner is because some of these leases are so old. If you go into the land records, and I don't expect anybody to ever do this because it's pretty boring stuff, but you can go back and it's in like, some of it's handwritten because it was before typewriters. It's crazy. So it can be hard to find who the ground rent owner is because, you could have a ground rent, you could be the landlord, you could pass away and you don't have anyone to will it to, or you kind of forgot that you had it and you didn't will it to anybody and it just kind of exists. It's just kind of out there and nobody knows who it is. Yeah. So the challenge is sometimes somebody owns that land and you don't know who it is. And in cases like that, what happens is mortgage companies will require that you collect at closing 3 years worth of the ground rent and set it aside in an escrow account, let the title company hold on to it for those 3 years, and make sure that if anybody ever comes back out and says, oh, this is my ground rent, this is my land, here's the deed that shows it, the leasehold agreement that shows it, they would then get that money. So the law is you can't recoup, or at least the law in Maryland anyways, you can't recoup more than 3 years worth of back ground rent. So that's why the 3 years is collected up front. After that point, let's say I go 5 years without collecting ground rent, excuse me, I can collect the 3 years the most recent 3 years that I didn't have. No further back than that, I can't collect years 4 and 5. But from that point moving forward, I'm allowed to collect ground rent again, each year, like I was supposed to have been collecting the whole time. So you can never go back more than 3 years. Typically, this is something that is, again, it's unique to like the Baltimore City-ish area. You can redeem it if you want to. You know, if you wanted to buy it out and the leaseholder was okay with it, there's a calculation depending on when the lease was written, you know, how old it is, what that calculation is going to be. But it's going to be, you know, a lot more than just a couple of years of ground rent, because it needs to make sense to the leaseholder that,
Right.
you know, okay, I am going to sell this because I'm making this much more money than I would. I'd have to keep it for, you know, X number of years to make that much money.
Yeah.
I'd rather just sell it now and have it. You know, it's typically it's like $10 to $100, or, you know, I think I've seen like 120 or 130 a year. So it's not, again, it's not breaking the bank, but it's more of a, you know, it's more of a nuisance sometimes to figure out who owns the ground rent and who do you have to pay and how do you pay them and what address do you send the money to. And you know, one of the unique things about this is that if you have a VA buyer purchasing a home that is listed as leasehold or ground rent, that has to actually go to the VA for approval first. I have only ever had that happen one time ever in 21 years, so it's not a very common thing. And again, ground rent isn't very common either. I mean, you could probably go most of your career in this industry and not run into a ground rent if that's not the area that you do business in.
Yeah, we have a couple every so often.
Yeah, it's not as common as an HOA or a condo fee or even, you know, the front foot assessment. It's probably the least common of all of those. But I find it fascinating that you could own this land for 99 years or even more, or you could forget that you own it, or your kids don't know that you own it, and so it just kind of like disappears over time. So maybe, I don't know, maybe 100 years from now, nobody owns ground rent. I don't know.
Yeah, it's
a weird thing.
Yeah, I had a client who recently, there was ground rent on a home that we were running numbers on for them. And it was like $90 a year or whatever. And it ended up being like $7 as a part of their monthly payment. So, I mean, that just gives you an example of like what it would look like even with your monthly payment kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I even, like, there's a portion on a contract of sale that literally states out whether it's ground rented, it's held in lease, whatever the case is. So it is important that, you know, it's mentioned and people know about it, buyer, seller, all of it. Realtor.
Yeah. And it's got to be, you have to register your ground rents with the state, at least here in Maryland you do. So you register it with the state. There's a ground rent registry that you can refer to find out who owns it, how you pay them, that kind of information. And that's something that the title company really gets into and makes sure is all kind of on the up and up when you're buying a house that does have ground rent.
Yeah, no, agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but these are fees that you will more than likely see unless you're buying a single family home. But even single family homes have HOAs involved with them.
Yeah.
They could have ground rent, you know.
Yeah. And if it's newly constructed, you might have a front foot assessment. So there's no telling. You're not going to be exempt from all of these fees with everything that you buy, and so it's very likely that one of these four things will apply to you at some point in your home ownership journey. Yeah,
but that's what we're here for, to help you kind of break that out and to show you what that looks like if you're looking to buy a certain home that has any of these things. So yeah. Well, that's what we have for you on ground rent, HOA, front foot fee assessments, and condo fees. If you have any questions associated with any of those or anything we talked about, obviously reach out to either one of us. Maybe we didn't cover something that you have a question on, and I like that. I like when people are like, well, hold on, what about that? So,
we try to do the best that we can to prepare for all the scenarios, but we're just two people, and you guys are a lot more. So if there's something else that comes up or another question that arises, let us know.
Yeah, for sure. But either way, have a great day, and thanks for tuning in.
All right, bye.
Bye.